Why some people shouldn't become managers. Becoming a manager is one of the most common career moves. And one of the things I've seen over time is sometimes it removes people from the work they really enjoyed doing. So that's basically probably one of the default paths in one's career is the take that management option. And there's a lot of advantages to that, right? Compensation, moving your career forward, showing your leadership skills. And what I found is there's many amazing leaders that I've met along the way that made that progression, and they do a phenomenal job, and they love what they do. And I've also seen the reality of it where some people said yes to that path and it wasn't what made them happy. It wasn't what they wanted to do, but they didn't realize that until they were already down that path. Now, one of the examples that stands out, and I've seen this, actually 3 examples of this, they just all happen to be developers. One developer I met had mentioned that their manager had left the company, so there was a void, and they filled that void as being a manager. It might have been, and I don't remember what the duration was, but a new manager was hired as a replacement, but this person filled in the interim. And they said they were so happy and thankful to get back to writing code. And I thought that was so interesting because I've never heard anybody say that. Maybe people feel that way, but it's something they don't often discuss. But that's the way that they felt, and I really appreciated hearing that because it made complete sense to me. You make these decisions based on what you want, not what you feel society or the business perhaps expects from you. The other story, and I shared this on another video, was of being on a Zoom call, a pretty good sized Zoom call, and as an icebreaker question just to get everybody talking and being comfortable on camera was, what role would you do if you didn't have your current role? What career would you have? And many of the people, a high percentage, not quite 100%, but close to it, would be doing something different. That was just a mind blow. I didn't expect that. But one person in particular, and they sounded very sad. They were, shouldn't laugh, but they sounded really sad about it. And I don't know how many years they were in a leadership role as a manager, but they talked about how much they actually missed writing code and doing the work. And that's the big difference. There's a misalignment between those roles as being a manager in leadership versus an individual contributor. Somebody who's pulling the data, working in the software, they're actually building and doing, where in the management side, they're actually doing as well, but they're leading, they're coordinating, they're supporting. So it's a different skill set, a different day to day, which I think some people don't think about that. And that misalignment is where things tend not to work out very well. Now, another example was a similar story to the one I shared. Somebody was in leadership for some time, and there were some changes in the business model, and they were able to go back to being hands-on and going back to being hands-on and actually doing the work, and they were super excited about transitioning that work to somebody else that was going to fill that role. So keep that in mind. There's different skill sets, and I think what's important is if you think about in advance what your interests are, what your passions are, what work you enjoy doing, so that if that opportunity does arise, you already know in your mind if it's something that you want to do or not. You put thought into it in advance. Now, those leaders that I mentioned that are very successful in what they do, I'm willing to bet, I don't know 100%, but I would imagine in each of those cases, they basically raised their hand or they made it known that that was the path that they wanted to be on. And once leadership knows that's the path that you want to go down, then that whole one-on-one communication's a little bit different on how to get you prepped and ready to make that move in the future. And oftentimes you're going to have somebody that mentors you through that progression. So keep that in mind. Think about your passions, think about your goals, what makes you happy. You may make that decision to go that direction, and it turns out that it wasn't for you, and you go ahead and course correct and move back into that role that you had before. But thinking it through, planning it ahead, makes those conversations much easier and makes it much easier for you to make the best decision that's right for you. So I would think of it as, you shouldn't ask the question of should you become a manager. It's more of actually asking, what kind of work do managers do, and would you enjoy doing that? Maybe you can have conversations exploring that before you commit to that path. So keep that in mind. Wish you the best in all your career decisions. Think it out in advance. Have your goals. Know which direction you're heading. So when you have this opportunity, you make the best decision that's right for you. Thanks again. We'll talk soon.